Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. Thanks to the suggestion of a couple of viewers, I'm going to be trying the browser in a dark mode this week just to see how that looks in contrast to YouTube videos and how that might look on your TV. And while RetroRGB.com itself doesn't support dark mode natively yet, we'll be adding that at some point in the future, I figured I would just use a browser plugin in order to force that mode on websites that don't natively support it. I'll leave a link in the description for anybody that's curious. I'm not affiliated with that site at all. I just always like to give credit where credit's due. So if you have time, let me know what you think. Should I keep the weekly roundups like this with the browser in dark mode, or should I just kind of leave it as is and go back to the way it was? And once again, I'm certainly not going to be forcing dark mode on the website permanently because there's obviously scenarios in which the opposite one would be better, but I would definitely like to leave it as an option. But for now, you'll just have to use a plugin in order to make that happen. But let me know what you think, and let's jump in and see what we've got going on for the past week. First up, the team behind the ZX Spectrum Next has just launched a Kickstarter campaign for a third version of the hardware. This time, it's offering a more powerful FPGA as well as new cores for the Sinclair QL and Commodore 64. Complete units start at about $400, and there's options to upgrade the original two ZX Spectrum Next as well. So there's also board options, board-only options, and options that include an accelerator board as well. All of them are due to ship to customers by the end of this year, and the campaign was already funded, but there's still a couple of weeks left if you're interested in picking one up. And while a project like this, having a target release date of by the end of this year, would normally be a little bit too ambitious, you have to remember that the team has already gone through all of the pains that you would normally go through for large-scale projects like this. So the tooling for the case and the keyboard are already there. They've already made two versions of the motherboard. So my guess, and I don't really know anything about the team, but my total guess is that they just have everything lined up and ready to go from their previous two runs of production, and they just need the funding to pull the trigger on it, and everything's already there and set to go. So it's just a guess, but I just wanted to bring up the point that, when there's a big project like this, having a within 6 months release date isn't really realistic, but this one kind of feels like it is. So I'm complimenting the team and just kind of supporting them on this, because any of my fellow nerds that's like, wait a minute, a full FPGA reproduction of a computer within 6 months, this is the third run with an updated motherboard. This isn't a from scratch brand new project. So while with Kickstarters you always take a risk, my gut's telling me this one's just a cool project that's totally safe to put your money down on, and you should be able to get it before the end of the year. So obviously, check out the Kickstarter campaign for all of the details, the new color differences and everything else, and see if you're interested in any of that. But either way, the first two were pretty successful. The second one had a bunch of delays that were not the team's fault. So I just think this one's on track and ready to go. And if you're interested, check it out. Next, Chris from Displaced Gamers recently released the next video in his Behind the Code series, this time focusing on the original Metroid. And this is going to be the first of a multi-part video series digging into why the game was so laggy. And this game really dug into the start of it, as well as the differences between the Famicom Disk System and the NES version, and why the Famicom Disk System version played better than the NES cartridge version. That alone, I think, is worth watching this video for, but Chris also gets into the code and talks about some of the reasons why we might be seeing it working like that. And also, Chris was asking what we want to see in the next couple of videos on this. And no, not, hey, let's fix it so we can re-release the game, but more like what sections should be analyzed as to why they're even more laggy than some of the other sections. I think the Kraid boss battle was the one that really stood out to me as, pretty noticeably bad, because I hadn't really I don't think I got to any of the bosses when I was a kid. I think because you have to have context of stuff like that. An open world game like Metroid wasn't really common at all. I mean, the only other one I definitely remember playing was the original Zelda. So when I got to Metroid, I just liked exploring around and finding stuff and finding weapons. And I was very, very young, so I didn't really get that there could be that much more progression to it. But when I went back as an adult and played it again, it definitely, a lot really stood out about it. I think the one thing that really stood out to me is when you jump and move forward at the same time, the background would kind of jerk forward uneven. So, Chris, if you want to get into that, I'm very curious as to what the explanation would be. But also, that I think that boss fight really kind of intrigued me because I was like, I don't think there's that much going on the screen. Certainly not as much as like a dungeon in Zelda with a ton of dark nuts running around. So stuff like that. If you want to just add to the comments of that video and see what you want to see or him dig into and what other sections might be really not laggy that you could kind of dig into the analysis of. So as usual, if you want to watch this video and you want to understand what's going on, you do not need to be a programmer. Chris always does such a good job in explaining things in a way where if you just have some patience and some nerdy curiosity, you could totally get what's going on, even if you're like me and could never reproduce it or write any code for it. You could still totally get a sense of understanding of what's happening in the game. So let Chris know what you want for the next couple of videos, and definitely check this one out if you're interested, because Metroid was always such a fascinating game for me for a million reasons. So seeing this analysis was very cool. Oh, and of course, check out the NES to SNES conversion by the developer Infidelity. Just search RetroRGB for it. I certainly have a bunch of posts and live streams of it. And wow, what a massive difference from the original, even though it's exactly the original. It's not a rewrite, it's the same graphics and all of that stuff, but definitely check that out as well, because while I'm going to be looking forward to the rest of this series, I'm never playing the original NES Metroid again. I'm only playing that conversion, so check that out as well. Next up, the Retro channel is now selling a digital audio mod for basically every original PlayStation that has a parallel port. So not the smaller PS1 version, but anything that would be compatible with like the SIO should be compatible with this. And the parallel port is just utilized to make this a no-cut mod, as well as make it an easier installation, because there's very, very few things that you have to solder on the inside. And while, of course, there's other SPDIF mods available for it, they're a lot more complicated to install than this one. So if you have an original PlayStation that you want pure digital audio from and you're not using a SIO, this is definitely the one that I would recommend. The video goes into installation, comparisons, and everything that you really might want to know about this. And also, they're available to purchase on the Tindy store, but I just wanted to let everybody know, if you watch this and you go to the store and they're out of stock, just give it a day or two. There's a whole bunch more coming in, and I just wanted to get this post out because the video was posted a couple months ago now, I think, but they sold out immediately because a ton of people wanted this. And it makes sense, right? You want to use your original consoles, but you just want the best audio you can, and you don't have to worry about anything else. And that even goes for people that just use composite video on CRTs. If you're like me and you just want to wheel your CRT in front of your existing stereo, now you could get or take advantage of all of that pure digital audio through whatever great surround system you have, or even just stereo audio system, and let that do the digital to analog conversion. Also, I kind of crack up at the whole audiophile PlayStation 1 thing. I distinctly remember sitting at my desk in an old job that I had when one of those bottom feeding tech sites posted about the audiophile version of the PlayStation 1. No need to drop names, but we all know those blogs that just cut and paste anything they can to get clicks. And I remember reading the post going, none of that makes sense. That one of the things I remember is that you have to leave your PlayStation on for a couple of days so that it warms up in order to get the true audiophile output. And that just reminded me of like the audiophile rocks, the perfectly weighted rocks that you would put in, which I think was actually a joke that some people took seriously. Whatever, it still seemed ridiculous to me. So at the time, I didn't have the knowledge of digital to analog conversion that I do now, but yeah, there's no possible way that that's going to compare to a good DAC or even just a really good stereo that has obviously its own digital to analog conversion, because you have to output to analog speakers. So if you really want the best, cleanest audio out of your PS1, you could play those games on a PlayStation 2 and use that SPDIF output, or get this inexpensive mod. I believe it's $40, and just do this pretty easy mod to your console and have your choice of output from the back. But check out the video for all the info you need. And if you have any more thoughts on the whole audiophile version of the PlayStation 1, definitely let me know, because I think I re-looked into that after starting RetroRGB. And I was excited to try it out because I was like, I love being wrong in scenarios like that. I have a very easy time looking at the camera and being like, I screwed up. This is awesome. Here's why. But I think my gut was always right with that one. And I'm kind of sticking to that unless somebody gives me some pretty solid proof otherwise. Digital Foundry recently did a video showcasing the Spaghetti Kart project, which took Mario Kart 64's decompilation and made it into a game that you could just install on any PC, Mac, Linux, Windows, whatever. And I installed it on my PC with not the greatest video card. I think I have a 3060 in here, and it's got an i9 processor, but it's 3 or 4 years old now, and it ran perfectly at 4K 144 on my LCD monitor, and I will never go back to playing the original Nintendo 64 version after that, which is still a good game and everything, but once you play this version, it might be hard to kind of go back to that, especially if you start to get into multiplayer and check out how the frame rates differ between the two. And DF also went into playing it on a CRT, which is something that I thought was perfect because people like me who enjoy retro content often prefer to view that content on the time period displays, so CRTs in this case. But you could have a happy medium. You could take this project and output it at 640 by 480 at 120 hertz on a lot of PC CRT monitors. A ton will support that refresh rate, or even higher if yours would be able to. But that way you kind of get the best of everything. You're still viewing on a CRT. You still have that kind of nostalgic-esque look to it, because it certainly isn't going to look 240p, but at a very, very smooth frame rate. So awesome video, amazing project. The only couple of things that you need to know is you need to provide a ROM that matches the exact hash listed on the GitHub page for it to work. That is as easy as, copying and pasting the hash and doing a creative web search for. I think it took me like 2 minutes to find the right ROM to use this. Also, I did get a crash when I was playing in windowed mode, but I didn't get any crashes at all in full screen. So if that happens to you, just try full screen mode. And also, the new texture packs that were created by Ghostly Dark aren't currently compatible with Spaghetti Kart, but if you go to the GitHub page, it says they're talking to the team and they're going to try to make it available. So I will absolutely do a follow-up post when that happens, and I would love to do a live stream, even though the stream is going to only be in 60 hertz. Maybe I'll try to do it in 240 hertz on that OLED monitor I'm still borrowing, but then have OBS just send it out as 60, so we could kind of do the best of both worlds. And I'd also like to try it on a CRT as well, but I want to wait for the texture packs, because while the game looks amazing as is, I kind of want to go the extra distance and be a little bit ridiculous and show the best you can get out of this stuff. So check out the DF video if you want all the details, and of course links to everything are right here in the post. And if you see the texture packs go live for Spaghetti Kart before I get to do the live stream, shoot me a heads up somewhere, please, so I don't forget. I am following the developers and all that stuff, but nobody's perfect and I miss things. So I'm excited to see where else this could go, because it's a really, really fun game. And trust me, once you see it running in a high frame rate and high resolution, I think you might have a hard time going back to the original too. Tito from Macho Nacho Productions recently posted a video showcasing PSBBN, which was the original Japanese-only PlayStation Broadband Navigator menu, which was ported to English by the developer Cosmic Scale, and also had a bunch of other features added to it, including the ability to load games from your hard drive, both PS1 via Popstarter and PS2 games, of course, and the ability to go check out some of the original PSBBN software. And I think this is absolutely awesome, but there are a few things that you need to note. First, zero shade being thrown. I'm just kind of giving everybody realistic expectations, but holy crap, what an awesome project from the developer Cosmic Scale. Nothing but props. So I just want to make sure to set everybody's expectations. First, in order to install this, you have to use Linux, or you have to install Linux on a Windows PC like Tito showed, which is just really annoying. I have so many friends that love Linux, and I keep trying to go over to it, but the only reason I don't is because a lot of stuff I do kind of requires Windows for the things that I work on. But it's just always frustrating that every time somebody says the L word, it's always, okay, now copy and paste a whole bunch of stuff from the command line that you probably could have whipped up a very easy GUI for. So that's what you need to expect with this one. As with all stuff in Linux that is well documented. It's not hard. You just have to be patient. You have to step by step go through it, copy and paste, pay attention. Cosmic Scale did a great job with the documentation. Tito did an awesome job showing what to expect if you're going to do this his way on Windows. But if anybody out there, my fellow Linux nerds, wouldn't it be kind of easy just to create a Linux boot USB stick that you could just plug into your computer, boot to that stick, and use that with a TUI? You know, not quite a full graphic interface, but just one of those. Use your keyboard to select your options and install it that way. Shouldn't be too hard, right? So if anybody wants to help out with this project, I think that could open it up to a lot more people. But if not, that's fine. Anybody with some patience could definitely install this one and just follow Tito's video and the original instructions. Also, you are able to launch OpenPS2 Loader from this software. And that's very important because if you're the type of person that only loads your games off of the PlayStation 2's hard drive, then you don't really need that. You could just use the awesome menu and the full graphics with the pictures of the games as you're scrolling through. You don't really need that at all. But if you're like me, who primarily launches games over RetroNAS, then you would need to use this menu to then launch into OpenPS2 Loader, the same way that if you have FreeMcBoot, you launch into the FreeMcBoot OS, which looks just like the PlayStation 2 one, and then launch OpenPS2 Loader to get to your games. So no extra steps. I just wanted to mention that it doesn't yet support network loading. And I think if you're using games over the MemCard Pro, it would work just like it does with the stock PS2, and you would actually end up booting to FreeMcBoot using that MemCard Pro to get your games launched. So it's certainly stuff that you want to pay attention to before jumping into this, but if you're just the type of person who loads their games off a hard drive, this seems like an awesome way to upgrade your PlayStation 2. I think the only other thing is it takes a little bit longer to boot this OS than it does something like FreeMcBoot, but I don't think it's a huge deal. So overall, it's a total win. Once again, I just wanted to give everybody realistic expectations of where the project is at today. I'll be following the project. I'll be following any updates they do. And it's nothing but positivity coming here. I just want to make sure that everybody knows what to expect. And I'm really looking forward to trying it myself at some point in the future when I have extra time. So thanks to Cosmic Scale and thanks to Tito for getting this video out to us. Next up is a very big deal for anybody who's a fan of the Killer Instinct arcade games. Developer Rich Whitehouse is now working on a software emulator for them that is in the same vein as the Big Pimu Atari Jaguar emulator. This Big Insect emulator does an amazing job with Killer Instinct and allows you to render it in native resolutions, native refresh rates of your monitor, and add a ton of the features that the Big Pimu Atari Jaguar emulator had, like CRT filters, netplay, save states, and a whole bunch of other really cool stuff. Now, at the moment, it is Patreon only. As with everything Rich works on, it will be released to the public eventually, but this one might take a little longer just because I think Rich just got a paid job that he has to work on, and then we'll kind of bounce between this one. So if you're a fan of the game or a fan of Rich's work like me, definitely support to get this because it's absolutely worth it. There are a few things to note though. First up, you need to find both the MAME files and the CHD files in order to create the ROM that this emulator uses. So essentially, you figure out, or you find the CHD files for either version 1.4 or 1.5D, then get the MAME files that match. And what I did was just extract them all into one folder, extract the Big Hard Maker tool, yes, that's what it's called, into the same folder, and then just run the batch file. I think Rich said you might be able to drag and drop them over it, but I'm a nerd. Spending 2 seconds typing in a command line isn't that big a deal for this, because it's only 1 or 2 things to type, not an entire long list of instructions. But then it generates the files that have the correct extension. It's just kinst bighard.bighard, kinst2.bighard, and those are the only files that you need to save. So when you're done, you can delete everything else except those 2 files, and then throw those into the emulator's directory, or anywhere, but I just leave them there to make it easier, and that's it. So I copied and pasted one of the things that Rich had said in the README, but it really is that easy. You just create the files, and there you go. And after booting, you just need to map your controllers. So after booting it, you still need your keyboard to kind of navigate through it, but just map the controller buttons, then go in, and I suggest just setting it to the native refresh rate and resolution of your monitor and go from there. I just have that 3060 graphics card, and it worked perfectly with no issues, no blips, no slowdown or anything like that. So Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of Killer Instinct, either one or two, and you like gaming on a PC, this really is a must try. Now, obviously, not everybody can afford to join a Patreon, or not everybody's that big of a fan of the game, so I'll obviously let everybody know the moment this thing goes public. But if you have the ability to support and you want to try this out, it's definitely worth it. And I reached out to a couple of people in the fighting game scene. Hopefully, they'll be able to test it out. Obviously, Evo's coming up, so I wouldn't expect any big live streams till after that, just so everybody has time to come home and kind of chill after that. But I'm really interested to see what pro players have to say, because I'm terrible at the game, but I loved it. I thought this was really cool, and I thought this was an excellent way to play it. But I really am looking forward to seeing pro players' opinions on it. And who knows, maybe this might even end up being what people use for KI tournaments in the future or something. You never know. But thanks to Rich for doing all this stuff, and check out links to everything if you're interested. Next up, Veronica Explains recently posted a video showcasing a new HDMI mod for the Commodore 64. This is made by Side Projects Labs, and it's a no-cut mod that's called HD64. And this one is one of those hybrid emulation mods like the Megaswitch HD, which requires you to remove the VIC-2 chip and put it into an interposer that then slots both of them back into the original slot. Then you run a flex cable over to the HD64 board and solder a few more things in for audio and power and other stuff. And it allows you to use all original equipment on the Commodore 64, and it doesn't remove any functionality other than RF output, because you remove the RF box in order to put this in its place to make it a no-cut mod. But I think this is really awesome because you could use all of your original accessories. You could essentially use 100% all original setup. You're just emulating the digital video on the output side, which is very accurate. So this is great for people that use a lot of accessories, like Veronica does with her music and uses it as a synth in order to play stuff on it. It doesn't take away from any of that other than just the easy ability to output on a flat panel. So while it would be pretty funny to see Veronica's band lug giant CRTs in their gigs in order to play this, I could totally see the need for somebody just wanting to use a flat panel. But also for streaming, for people that want multiple choices of displays, maybe you still want to use your composite or S-Video CRT. That functionality is not lost, but you also want to sometimes just use a flat panel display or whatever. I do think that mods like this are perfect for that. It is $130, so it's not cheap, and it's not as cheap as the Lumicode mod. I think Lumicode's going to be a little bit cheaper, especially if you already own an OSSC. But it works in the same way, and it includes audio built in, and I think it's an excellent choice. Of course, if you're just looking to try the Commodore 64 software, you could use free software emulation, you could use it through the Mister, but none of those provide easy ways to have all of the peripherals as well. So this is definitely a specific use case, and I think people will absolutely appreciate it. Now, I do love Lumicode, and I think that it is an awesome project that I'm a massive fan of, big fan of Copper Dragon's work, but I think this is one of those pick and choose what's best for you solutions. So if you have a couple of different consoles that you all want to use Lumicode on, it might just be cheaper and easier overall to do that mod and then just use one device, either the Lumicode's RGB converter or an OSSC, in order to get that out to whatever display you're using. The latest versions of the RGB to HDMI Lumicode boards do support audio as well, so you don't longer need any of those muxing boards to get the signal onto the HDMI kit. And if you're going to have a whole bunch of them, you might even be able to use a push button switch and kind of have them all linked together. And that might be cheaper and easier for you. But if you just want to add HDMI output to your Commodore 64, I agree with Veronica that it's a little less science project-y to install this one. So certainly no shade towards anybody here. There's different solutions for different setups. But I definitely wanted to highlight this because it seems like a really cool option for people who own Commodore 64s. And Veronica's video walks you through installation, what to expect, and everything else. So links to everything that you need here, including links to the 2 stores that are currently selling it and the main project GitHub, as well as obviously Veronica's video. Well, that's it for this week. What'd you think about dark mode? Should I be doing that going forward, or should I just go back to the way it was? I really have no preference. I just want to, as always, do whatever most people prefer just to make this better for you all. And if you're listening audio only, obviously it doesn't matter at all, but I just figured I would put that out there and give it a try just to see what people think. Anyway, as always, thank you to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in absolutely any way, because it really is you who's keeping all of this stuff going. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment, connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.